Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse. It's been a while since I've recorded an episode. I know we collectively have all been really, really busy on our ends. Me and Tyler with school getting back has had big implications for the busyness of our lives. And with Eli, work, I know that work for him has just been hectic and chaotic recently for an extended period of time. So all of us have kind of been struggling at the same time, and which has made it difficult for us to make these episodes to the extent that we wanted to. So especially for all the diligent listeners that are waiting every week, a couple days a week, every Monday or Thursday or whenever we end up putting them out, waiting for an episode to come out. Apologies for not being able to produce the content that we've wanted to over the past couple weeks. So sorry about that. Sorry to the listeners. And we are making efforts to the best of our ability to get back on track and get back on pace. The Orioles, fortunately, things sort of came at a good time for us. If we had to pick one point in the season where we were going to sort of collapse or not collapse, but if we were going to be struggling to produce content, I think from an Orioles team perspective, this isn't the worst time period for us to be doing that. The Orioles have been rather uninteresting over the past couple weeks in general, despite maybe a few uh, things here and there that I think Oriole fans would normally be interested in and want to see. The play of Sam Basayo, for instance, being the first thing that comes to mind, and a few other things here and there. But in general, the past couple weeks, the Orioles being out of playoff contention, not gearing up to go to the playoffs. If this was last year and we sort of had a meltdown, and we sort of had something like this happen, it would sort of be a meltdown or feel like a meltdown. Uh, Especially as we were bracing and preparing for the playoffs. But in this situation with the Orioles out of playoff contention, feels a lot more reasonable and sort of okay. Yeah, the Orioles, they did wrap up game 162 today. Fortunately, the Orioles did end up getting swept by the New York Yankees. That was not fun. It's never fun to get swept by the Yankees. It would have been more miserable if us getting swept by the Yankees had led the Yankees to winning the American League East over the Toronto Blue Jays. Fortunately for Oriole fans who I think don't really love the Toronto Blue Jays either, but I think would definitely prefer the Blue Jays to win the AL East than the Yankees. Fortunately, the Toronto Blue Jays similarly swept the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Orioles losing to the Yankees, fortunately, due to the Blue Jays having tiebreakers, did not help the Yankees or did not help the Yankees to win the division. The Blue Jays operated with no margin for error because the Orioles were not able to get even a single win in this final series against the Yankees. And so the playoff stage is set, and despite the Orioles' non-participation in it, of course, I think I definitely will be, and probably a lot of other Oriole fans out there will be tuning in and checking out what is going on in the playoffs because the MLB playoffs are always, always exciting. So this year is going to be no different. So definitely looking forward to that, even though the Orioles are not going to be participating. So, of course, definitely commiserations, I think, is warranted for the Baltimore Orioles and their season. We all know that it was a really, really, really difficult year for the Orioles over the course of this past year. It started off with Brendan Hyde being fired very, very early on into the season. and just things have after that point, things got a little better, but never really turned around in any sort of significant kind of way or meaningful sort of way. So, the Orioles did end up finishing their season 12 games under 500, 75 and 87. I think that we will intend to put out a season recap episode, just sort of reflecting on the entirety of the season. I would imagine, I think at least for me, I think I need a few days to process it, even though I mean, it did just end. We've sort of known the state of affairs for this team for a while. So I do think, yeah, taking a few days and just thinking about it a little more deeply. Hopefully, at least a couple of us can get back on here and talk about the season in its entirety. But for now, even though the season is over and we would sort of expect sort of a season recap episode, this is something that I sort of wanted to talk about. Um, a little while ago. I just haven't really, as everybody can kind of see, haven't really had a chance, even though it is fitting in some ways or positive in some ways for me to be able to talk about this now because I have all the information needed to sort of make kind of the claims that are kind of needed in order to sort of figure this out. So I'm going to sort of talk about one particular aspect of the Orioles baseball this year that there was definitely a noticeable difference from this year to last year. It sort of led to an outstanding stat for the Orioles this year, which is I think it's fascinating sort of how this happened and that it worked out like this. But yeah, I'm gonna talk just a little bit about the Orioles' power over the course of the year. Now, we talked about the Orioles' offense in general, just being way worse than it was last year overall. The Orioles, if you look at the season's end, just in general, the Orioles were a really, really bad baseball team. Had 75 and 87, but had a negative 111 run differential. So that was second worst in the league behind the Los Angeles Angels, who had 164. Yeah, second worst in the American League. The Colorado Rockies, of course, in the NL, had minus 424, which is just atrocious to even contemplate. And then the Nationals also really bad at minus 212. But some of the reason that the Orioles had this poor run differential, obviously, there are many factors that go into this. Yeah, this 111, negative 111 run differential. But one of the things that goes into this is just the fact that the Orioles' power this year took a significant hit relative to where it was last year. Now, if we are looking at that, right? So back in 2024, the Orioles as a team were second in Major League Baseball uh, with 235 home runs in all of Major League Baseball. Now, for a lot of the year, they were leading that category. Uh, we've talked about sort of the second half. That's sort of what made it competitive and ended up making the Yankees end up taking that in its entirety. But the Orioles ended up having 235 home runs, second best in Major League Baseball, even above the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the Orioles' power in 2024 was really a big and important facet of their game. And this year, the Orioles dropped all the way down to 11th with 191 home runs over the course of the regular season. Now, that is without actually doing the math and calculating, I believe that is a swing of minus 44 home runs, I believe. Yeah, 44 home runs. I'm not betting anything on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing the math right in my head. Um, and that's a lot. And that is, I think when we look back on this season and we think about and just kind of contemplate or wonder about what went wrong, there are a lot of questions and it brings up a lot of, where did the power go? The power, sort of being to some extent, a manifestation of just the much worse Orioles offense over the course of the entire year, or an extension of just an overall worse offense than the Orioles had in 2024. But yeah, dropping from second to 11th on that list and taking a hit in home runs to that extent is really, really a big deal. And it makes a big difference. And it showed up in a lot of different ways for the Orioles, and it had a big impact on how this Orioles offense functioned over the course of 2025. The other pretty remarkable thing about this, with the Orioles having that big decrease in home runs, is just the fact that the Orioles did not end up having anybody on this team hit a total of 20 home runs, which no other team in Major League Baseball this year did not have any player hit 20 home runs. Now, the Orioles did have a cluster of guys hit 17 home runs. Gunnar Henderson hit his 17th today. Jordan Westberg had 17, and also Jackson Holliday had 17. Um, and in more or less a vacuum, if you didn't know anything else about a player and you said, "Hey, how's 17 home runs over the course of a season?" You would say, "Yeah, sure, that's not bad." But the fact that the Orioles did not have anybody on this team with all the players, with all the offensive power that the Orioles demonstrated last year, it's sort of remarkable that we are in this situation where we are looking at this whole team and nobody on it hit a total of 20 home runs over the course of the entire year. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the reasons for that, what that means for 2026, and yeah, just talk about what exactly went wrong with this Orioles offense. So, um, the first thing that I think is worth pointing out, and the one of the things that I think is worth pointing out, that sort of, I guess, statistically reduced the chances or the percentages that the Orioles hit 20 home runs this year, was the trades that the Orioles made at the trade deadline. So the Orioles got rid of two guys that were sort of previously in contention for hitting 20 home runs over the course of the regular season, traded them both away. I'm thinking about Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn. Now, it ended up that both of them uh, did not either hit 20 home runs over the course of the entire season. They as well both ended up with 17. Now, I think that it is worth pointing out that of course, we know that if they had been stayed on the team, things might have been different. Maybe they would have hit 20 home runs. And if Mike Elias was trying to, if his first objective was getting a player on this team to hit 20 home runs, he absolutely would have increased his chances by holding on to Mullins and O'Hearn, despite it not making any logical baseball sense to do that. Um, but yeah, that would have sort of been the move if his objective was to hit 20 home runs. Now, neither of them ended up getting it. Cedric Mullins, you could say, ended up going to the Mets, had a little bit, was a part of sort of that Mets collapse that ended up happening. Not to say that he was that much to blame for it. He definitely didn't perform great while he was on the Mets. He only had a 569 OPS offensively. Of course, he always, makes contributions defensively. Hit 183 with the Mets. But yeah, so Cedric Mullins being taken out, maybe he had 15 while he was with the Orioles. Even though he wasn't he started off the year really well offensively, struggled as we approached the trade deadline. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a case to be made that had he stayed an Oriole for the rest of the season, he would have had a good shot at hitting 20 home runs. And then Ryan O'Hearn is the other guy to sort of think about, in this conversation. He ended up being dealt to the San Diego Padres. He had knocked 13 when he was with us for the Orioles. And then he went to the Padres and only hit four. So it's kind of funny. 17 is sort of the magic number, I guess, for Oriole home run hitters, Mullins, O'Hearn. And then, as I said, the three guys that did end up hitting 17 on the Orioles' current roster, Henderson, Holiday, and Westberg. So, we could definitely look at the trades as part of the reason why the Orioles are in this situation where, sort of this embarrassing kind of stat of not having anybody hit 20 home runs over the course of the 2025 season. And then after that, one of the other explanations that I think is definitely worth mentioning is injuries. And injuries sort of combined with the fact that, we really did not have any player on this team put a full season together, at least offensively. And I think that that is sort of a really important thing to kind of think about and to kind of consider. Um, and that is part of the reason why the Orioles are sort of in this, predicament where they ended up, having nobody really on this team crack, especially in today's game, a pretty basic threshold of 20 home runs. 20 home runs is not it's good. 20 home runs is good. But it's definitely not that uncommon that nobody on a major league team should be doing that in this version of Major League Baseball. Granted, it's not the steroid era or it's not the height of the steroid era like it was a few years ago, but it's also not the dead ball era either. And yeah, a team like every other team in Major League Baseball should have somebody hit 20 home runs on the team. So if we're looking at this Orioles team and we're thinking about injuries and guys just in general not putting a full season together, in general, the one exception to that I would say is Jackson Holiday. Jackson Holiday, overall, I think it's fair to say took a step forward this year. Um, as a baseball player. He had a pretty good season in general. Yeah, so I think especially where he's at, and especially where he was at last year, this year was a significant improvement for him, a step in the right direction. Obviously, we hope that his growth does not end here. He did not even have a 700 OPS by the end of the season, even though he certainly had stretches where he well was above 700 OPS. But in general, yeah, Jackson Holiday was really, really an important, consistent part of this Orioles team this year, playing second base every single day. Didn't have a lot the Orioles did not have much to worry about in terms of his health. And he just went out there every day, basically. He played 149 games. And yeah, overall did well for us. So yeah, Jackson Holiday, the 17 home runs for him is definitely a step forward in general. Even though, I think he can be a guy that hits 20, 25 home runs. He might not be a 30 home run guy every year. I think 30 home runs is within his reach for sure. But I think he's on a year to year kind of basis more looking like a 20 to 25 home run player, which is fine. But the 17 home runs for him, I think he definitely did, is kind of an exception in this way from the rest of the team because he really did put a full season together. He did have ups and downs over the course of the season. He had offensive slumps, but in general, when I'm thinking about Jackson Holiday, I would say he sort of put a full season together in a way, most other guys on this team did not. The guy that I think maybe comes closest to putting a full season together, beyond Holiday is Gunnar Henderson. He played in 154 games out of the 162 total. He was hurt to start the year, and he uh, did really sort of have some offensive struggles at the very beginning of the year when he returned from injury. So I think that is had a big role in sort of how his season played out. Overall, he definitely ended the season as an above average hitter. He had 120 OPS plus, so definitely well above league average hitter. And yeah, I mean, overall, there were moments this year where he definitely, um, to some extent, seemed to return to the form that he was at last year, or was showing signs of it, or showed sparks of it. But overall, he had a big, big, um, sort of st this year in general for him was significantly worse. His OPS was more than 100 points less, for instance, than it was last year. And of course, last year he hit 37 home runs, and this year he regressed to 16. So he got off to a really, really slow start. And that explains partly some of this. But just in general, if he had hit sort of home runs even after that month at the pace he had the year before, um, he, definitely would have hit this 20 home run threshold. I think that most Oriole fans would have been shocked at the end of last year if we knew that Henderson had played an entire season and had not even hit 20 home runs, right? Or basically an entire season, right? So that would have been rather shocking, I think, to a lot of Oriole fans. So, um, you know, there was a lot of talk this year about the change in power. A lot of he still had a lot of doubles this year. I think he might have even had. Let me just double check this. But Yeah, so he had more doubles than he had last year. He had 34 doubles this year and 31 last year. But what that sort of means is a lot of the home runs were turning into doubles for him. Um, as much as Gunnar Henderson did improve offensively throughout the course of the regular season, um, he did, even after that first month or month and a half or so, where he really struggled, even if we sort of reduce the season to just from that point to the end, um, he still didn't really have a full season, or put together a quote unquote full season for Gunnar Henderson. Today, there was a lot of talk about it. He had snapped a big home run drought that he had of 31 games without a home run. And the one he hit today, a home run is a home run, but it barely scraped over the wall in Yankee Stadium. So it kind of says most other parks that would not have been a home run, and the drought would have continued. But he was able to snap that drought before the season ended. So yeah, but overall, yeah, he had a significant regression in the power department. What does that mean for him going into next year? I think, look, we might never see the 37 home run Gunnar Henderson again. That was tremendous power that he demonstrated that one year. Do I think he's going to be under 20 the rest of his career? No. I think he's going to I think he will, on a regular basis. I think he'll hit for more home runs than Jackson Holiday, for instance. I think he's more in the 25 to mid to to low to mid 30s range. I think he's somewhere in that. I am not sure that he might hit 40 home runs in his career at some point, but I don't think he's going to be a Kyle Schwarber type player that is hitting 40 home runs or 50 home runs year in and year out. I think he will sort of be in the high 20s sort of area, high 20s, low 30s kind of range for the rest of his career. But Gunnar, Gunnar Henderson by himself has right if he had sort of just put up the same number of home runs that he had last year, the Orioles would be in a different conversation for their home run total over the course of the whole year. So there were 20 home runs right there that were lost just by Gunnar Henderson's production alone for this team. So he is sort of by himself a big explanation for why we saw the big dip. The other thing that we could sort of talk about is Anthony Santander. It was a big thing with the Orioles not re-signing him. Where does that leave with the Orioles with their power this year? Now, of course, this year for the Toronto Blue Jays, he did not have a good year. Had injuries throughout the course of the year that really made things difficult for him. But yeah, that's another big explanation as to why there was a significant decrease for the Orioles in 2025. If we look just at some of these other players, Jackson Holiday, I spoke about, but Jordan Westberg also was rather limited in at bats over the course of the year. Only played in 85 games, had 328 at bats. Reasonably, if he had just played a bit more, had maybe 400 at bats, it's reasonable to expect that he would have hit the 20 home run mark. Um, and Colton Cowser is sort of in a similar situation as well. He was also sort of limited with his injury at the very beginning of the season. Um, he had 327 at bats over the course of the year, hit 16 home runs. With a bit more, he probably would have eclipsed that as well. But with that said, Cowser also, for a long time, with the Orioles, had a big stretch when he was healthy, when he was not hitting. and yeah, was really, really struggling offensively. So he, just in general took a dip offensively, just, power aside, or power included, but just more broadly than just the power, took a big dip offensively. Yeah, and there are other guys that you certainly would have thought coming into the season would have been in contention for it. Adley Rutschman, it's I think looking at his numbers at the end of this season is really difficult to view overall. Another guy with a season riddled with injuries ended up only putting up 9 home runs over the course of the whole year. Had a OPS under 700. Yeah, and just, I mean, we sort of know the story with him. I think there's some, just questions about his long-term offensive abilities that need to be kind of resolved. Hopefully, as we've talked about with Basayo, hopefully can, alleviate some of the pressure on him going forward. But yeah, just ended up having 9 home runs over the course of the year. Another guy that is sort of in a very similar category to Rutschman, Tyler O'Neill. Orioles were looking for a lot of offensive production. He will almost certainly be back in an Orioles uniform next year, electing to remain with the club, I'm sure, given that he will not, if he were to opt out of his contract, will not go make more money in free agency given this year. So I think the Orioles are probably stuck with him for the next few years. But he had 9 home runs. I think he's definitely a guy that we expected to mash lefties and be competent against righties, and to end the season with 20 home runs. That did not happen. He had less than 200 at bats over the course of the whole season. Ramon Urias, another guy who sort of got traded, ended up having 8 home runs. Probably not a 20 home run guy. It's possible, but I think especially he doesn't hit for much power just in general in his career. And especially where, if you think about sort of the playing time that he had, yeah, so Arias has never hit more than 16 home runs in a single season over the course of his career. And also just if you think about, where sort of he was, yeah, and he ended up in 2025 with 11 home runs total. Um, but yeah, if you just think about the playing time he was getting, especially with Westberg returning, Holiday sort of playing regularly at second base, potentially he would have got a bit of playing time over at first base had he stayed with the club. But yeah, in general, the other thing to think about with him is just where he was hitting in the Orioles lineup. So he wasn't getting a lot of at bats, even when he was in the lineup. Yeah, and wasn't starting every game. So Ryan Mountcastle, sort of another guy you could think, if he stays healthy, he could be a 20 home run guy. He ended up with 7 over the course of the year, so not good at all from him. I think there are a lot of questions about his future in Baltimore, especially as Kobe Mayo, we saw a stronger September from him. He ended up with 11 home runs. Most of those sort of came at the back end of the season. um he certainly had plenty of struggles throughout the course of the year. Still a young player, kind of learning how to hit in the majors. And not all hope is lost for Kobe Mayo, but definitely I think is not a guy that Oriole fans necessarily should feel super comfortable about being the everyday first baseman heading into next season. I think the Orioles and the front office definitely need a contingency plan in case things don't work out. But did have 11 home runs over this year, and yeah, if you really look, you kind of go down the list a little bit more. Jeremiah Jackson is a guy, if he had been on the Orioles maybe the entire season and had consistent playing time, he's a guy maybe. And then, there are two other guys that you can kind of look at. Samuel Basallo, if he had started the year, I think 20 home runs is a lot to expect for a guy who would be making his major league debut. But he had 109 at bats, and he had four home runs in those 109 at bats. So wasn't very good offensively in general. Of course, he has just had a month or so in the majors, so nothing to worry about. But yeah. Um, and just to clarify, I don't think he would have hit 20 home runs had he been, especially with the reduced playing time we would have expected, the sort of the maintenance of his health, everything like that. So definitely, yeah, we will look forward to seeing what he does next year while he's on the major league team. And maybe he could put 20 home runs up. He'd have to be really, really good offensively for a long period of time, and his playing time has to be sorted out. And I think the Orioles need to make plenty of effort to keep him healthy, etc. But yeah, Basayo is a guy. Gary Sanchez probably would not have, even if he had stayed healthy all year, because he was backing up. Uh, Adley Rutschman, and due to just sort of where he is at in his career. But historically, he's had plenty of seasons, although not in a while, where he's hit 20 home runs. In 2021, he had 23. And then he had a couple seasons with 33 and 34. So, he's definitely hit 20 home runs before. But again, it's been a while. He would have had to have hit really, really well for this Orioles team to force himself into the lineup in the DH role, etc. But so I definitely don't think it was likely for him, even if he had stayed healthy. But I am just sort of giving and providing the wide array of possibilities for how this would have happened and the actual, alternative for what did end up happening. Um, so yeah, basically, that is sort of where things ended up for the Orioles. And yeah, I mean, even if you sort of look, there's one more guy potentially that you can identify, Heston Kjerstad. Um, of course, there were high hopes for him this year, ended up hitting really, really poorly for the Orioles. Didn't end up the season on the major league team, despite sort of the opportunities that were there for him to sort of, make his way into the major league team. But yeah, wasn't able to do that because he did not perform well at all. Um, so yeah, it's just you know, a lot of things offensively went wrong for the Orioles. Where does that leave the Orioles for 2026? At least in this power department, I do think the Orioles will recover more or less and have guys that hit 20 home runs. I think Gunnar Henderson will probably do it, barring, injuries, of course. But yeah, I think Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg is definitely a guy I think will do it. Um, Again. the caveat of injuries. The injuries apply to all of these guys, of course. Cowser and Holiday, I think both have very good chances of doing it. And Kobe Mayo potentially has an opportunity as well if he does hit well when he starts the year next year. We'll see about that, of course. But so the Orioles definitely have guys that are capable of doing this. I think that the Orioles' power is something that Mike Elias should think seriously about as we head into the off season. I do think some of the power that he sort of anticipated. Tyler O'Neill just did not work out this year. Maybe he'll work out better next year, but I think in a lot of ways the Orioles sort of have to go back to the drawing board for some of this and sort of rebuild some of this. Yeah, in the off season. So. Um, yeah, I think we are going to try to have a more comprehensive season recap. This just sort of talked about this one aspect of the Orioles, you know, this power dimension of the Orioles team. So we'll definitely talk more, I think, coming up just about how reflections in general on the 2025 season and where that leaves the Orioles for 2026. But with that said, I am yeah, I think this is like an important thing to examine for Oriole fans because there was so much emphasis and the offense was sort of viewed as what was going to carry this team to a World Series within, our proverbial window. Whatever we sort of imagine that as, it's, you know. So thinking about this, and this is sort of the time to talk about the nobody having the 20 home runs, and we sort of have the finality of these power numbers to assess and look at. So in any case, yeah, so just very disappointing in general from an Orioles power perspective. Again, we're right around the top third of the league. So it's like that is competent. Um, that's sort of competent, but it's not really competent if that is sort of your sort of carrying tool that you're sort of expecting to be the best part of your team overall. So I think that I mean we've made a lot of commentary about the emphasis Elias has had on drafting hitters and all these things, and to some extent um there have been some shortcomings in that strategy, and that is reflected in these power numbers. So things are going to have to change if the Orioles do want to win a World Series, or either these power numbers have to change, or they need to build a stellar rotation and sort of change the sort of strategy for how this team is going to be a World Series contender, even if not next year, which I'm certainly skeptical of after this year. Other hosts on this show might have differing perspectives on that. I definitely don't think the Orioles will be in World Series contention next year. um, I would entertain a discussion about, a second wild card type thing. But, we can definitely have those conversations at some point in the near future. But in any case, yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Yeah, a lot's got to change with this team next year, and hopefully we will be able to witness it. Hopefully 2025 will be a reality check for this Orioles team, that they're, maybe these young guys got a little overconfident. And here's a reality check, and they're going to learn from this and grow from this and come back better in 2026. We will see what happens. In any case, I will leave it right there. As I said before, we will do a more full season recap at some point in the near future, hopefully in the next few days. Thank you all so much for listening. Really appreciate you all. As you all know, basic things, follow the show, give us a 5-star rating and review. We have a YouTube channel. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Comment with any thoughts that you might have. If you want to get in touch with the show, please email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Please follow us on Blue Sky at the Warehouse Pod. Thank you all so much for listening. As I've said, thank you for your patience with our ability to put out episodes. But yeah, thank you all. Um, but yeah, in any case, thank you all so much. This has been the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse, and go O's.